And for now, as we proceed with our conversation, we will move on to our next speaker. And then our next speaker is not in a consular section, but has done some very interesting work. And I will just read to you the title of his research when I stumbled upon it. It said, "I don't want to have a separated home. Reckoning family and return migration among Nigerians in China." And I think, Adebayo, you have also done another piece of research, and and for some reason I'm not seeing the title being reflected here, but I think it was very much this, and I think I will read it out in your bio, where you're looking at Nigerians in China, and you are coming in from the perspective of a social researcher. So we are very excited to hear from you, because this is also, as we've heard from all the ambassadors, and also as we heard from Maria, listening to the voices of migrants is particularly very important as we channel all the support that we have to give. Otherwise, it remains not efficient, and actually we cannot even be accountable. But before I ask you to take the floor, Kudus Adebayo, let me just introduce our next speaker. His name is Kudus Oluwayotin Adebayo. He will correct me and give us the correct spelling, and I'm sure you will have a good laugh, because I haven't gotten his middle name even after practicing for so long. So Adebayo is a research fellow in the Diaspora and Transnational Studies program of the Institute of African Studies in the University of Ibadan in Nigeria, and he's currently a postgraduate fellow of the African Humanities program of the American Council of Learned Societies. His ongoing research explores the transnational livelihood, masculinity, and family dynamics of diaspora deportees from China, but he has also engaged with issues of settlement, race, interracial family dynamics, child upbringing, and return among Nigerians in China. Adebayo, walk us through your research and your work.
Okay, thank you everyone for inviting me to this conversation. So I'm really going to thank the previous speakers, and I realized that a lot of discussion has been had at the level of the government. When you think about it more broadly. But in my talk, even though I'm going to touch just briefly on a few of these. My discussion is going to focus essentially on the voices of migrants, voices on the ground, based on the research that I've been doing, and also how I've followed up on issues around migrant experiences during the COVID pandemic in China. So, my talk, basically, I think I'm going to just dive into it right now. So I'm looking at the Nigerian migration system and the consular service, a giant, migrant population on the continent, 2 to 50 million people. A lot of consulates, are as vast and wide-reaching as the population of Nigerian migrants. And this process of opening up embassies and consulates, began back in 1957. And currently Nigeria has over 100 embassies and around the world, including most of this thing. And because of the situation globally and the fact that people are traveling, a lot from this part of the world, there are a lot of needs that services have been put in to provide protection, and then also assistance and cooperation, as that sort of help improve the well-being of migrants. And then some of these needs, around issue of irregular migrations, from issue of trafficking and being stuck in place. A lot of work has been done on trafficking of Nigerian migrants, and how these people, particularly women, experience all kinds of issues. And then also the problem of undocumentation or being undocumented as a result of illegal stay, problem with regularization of stay, and the consequences of imprisonment. So if you also look at the issue of deportation, particularly when it comes to the issuance of emergency travel certificates, you also see that there's a lot of need around this. But more recently, we have seen increasingly that the Nigerian Consular Protection Services, has become so vital, for the protection of Nigerians globally, and in different contexts. We see recent context of emergencies and humanitarian crisis, around illegal detention and harassment, issue of xenophobia, and disease pandemics such as the COVID situation we're having currently. And then if you look at the trend, all around different settings, from the to, despite the context of the ECOWAS agreement and all of that, you also see issue more recently from, I think, from 2018 and upward, illegal and clandestine deportation of Nigerians from Germany, and then also issue around xenophobic attack of Nigerians in South Africa, and more recently, forced quarantining and ejection from hotel and apartment, in China as a result of local COVID control measures. So we've seen increasingly that the Nigerian consulate, has become really crucial, to improving the life of Nigerians more at the global level. But there are issues, that have been raised, at different levels, ranging starting from not having enough data, on Nigerian foreign citizens. Of course, this is connected to the issue of having a large population of undocumented people. And then reports, that done among Nigerians in Ghana and South Africa, reveal that about 49% of Nigerians, perceive the Nigerian consulate to be unhelpful. That's a lot of percentage. And a report back in 2006, a while years back now, it shows that the Nigerian government is seen as failing to adequately defend migrants' rights. There's a context in which immigrants have often been seen as there to protect their rights abroad. So the Nigerian embassies do not really support migrants and protect undocumented and even legal migrants. So going to the embassy has been seen or described as a very last resort. That is coming from DEHAS, who conducted a very large survey among Nigerian migrants back in 2006. But much has not changed, in the current era. There's still context of delays and that the Nigerian embassy citizen. And in fact, some are seen at times sort of supporting the host country against their own migrant population. So from that large context, I just want to give that background so that when I delve into the experience of Nigerians in China and the context of my own research, you can see how this global context also manifests, at this local level, and how that is affecting the lives of Nigerians there. So we talk about these flows, and of course, I like that the ambassador from Benin had pointed at some of these issues in terms of the categories. But what we also find is that there's no accurate data, of course, but studies indicate that Nigerians are the largest African migrant group in cities like Wanzhou, when they have moved to in large number from the 1990s upward. And as a result of this growing population of Nigerian presence, you see a situation in which Nigerian government decided that apart from the Shanghai and Beijing consulate that are available, to also open a consular office, in Wanzhou back in 2014. And this has been very useful. And part of the research that I did, was particularly to ask participants, what is the relationship between Nigerians, the Nigerian community there in Wanzhou and the Nigerian consulate in that city. From my research, I found that the consular office, has played an important role in improving the well-being of Nigerians. From the issue of access, ease of access to consular services, to visa support, to collaboration, with the association and local authorities, particularly when it comes to dealing with the issue of irregular migrants, particularly those that have been stalked or arrested, and then you want to process and return them. So they have played a lot of role. And then there's this arrangement of amnesty that was agreed upon, which made it possible for people who have overstayed to have access to return home without going through imprisonment and at a reduced cost. But despite this, there's this old vibe that I got from the field, in which some of the people I met have the perception that there's this constant distinction made between business community and the documented versus those that are in unstable employment and the undocumented. So you have this feeling, in the streets of Gwangju, and this constant perception that the consulate cannot help. When you ask them, oh, you are in this situation, you're having this challenge, have you approached the Nigerian embassy and all of that? So there's this dismissiveness, that result from that, oh, the consulate can't help. And then that it takes time to resolve a lot of issues. And you also have a situation, because of these this gap between the migrants on the ground and also the consulate. You have a situation where migrants in critical need, those who have to return home, those that are sick, that need a document to go back, rely on individuals, and community organizations. And some of those individuals who have to do the running around are themselves undocumented, further exposing them to vulnerabilities and possible deportations. So as this large context shows, we can begin to understand why at the height of the COVID pandemic and the need to control that the spread of that disease in Gwangju, you see a lot of Nigerians, experiencing difficulties. In fact, COVID has proved that more than ever, effective consular support for Nigerian migrants is crucial. For those who had come in to just do the money and all of this, to issue of fears of arrest and a lot of these issues. So we also see a situation of forced removal and homelessness, resulted from strategies of Gwangju administrators to manage COVID, resulting in serious rights infringement and caused sort of misery, if you want to take that in non-one-time situation, where people have to be homeless and a lot of that. So we also see that because of the social media, the spread and the how people quickly, raised issues on the different platforms globally, we see Nigerian diplomats, coming out in the streets and trying to intervene. And they had a lot of success with this, because you have sort of street level diplomacy going on, in that kind of encounters where these people come out and then have conversation with local authorities so that they can improve or better manage and respect, migrant rights. But for me, I think that this needn't happen, because they need not be in the streets, at this critical time during major health crisis, because they endanger themselves. I'm talking about people from the consular office. They endanger themselves, their staff and local, and also the migrants themselves. So I feel that there's a need, for joint effective policies that sort of lay out what step to take and how nationals ought to be treated and with respect. This means that there must be a continuing dialogue, with local authorities. But the first step towards this, and I'm rounding up now, is to think about the foundations, of unsupportive consular system and non-protection of citizens abroad. There has to be a shift in orientation, in thinking, and this is why this is important, because back as far back as in 2014, there's a way that sort of so-called consular representative also see migrants, see them as people who had run away. And then there's a statement credited to Shola Onidipe, former ex-deputy chief of commission in Beijing, who was saying that if this was not a democracy, he would say that most of the Nigerians that are living outside the country should not be there. They have no business being there. He talked about how they are doing drugs, how they are opening shops without licenses and not paying tax and a lot of this. So there's this image or representation that also come out, from the level of the consul, that sort of make it difficult for a better negotiation of respect, of human respect, that ought to come with service or consular service provision, particularly to people that are vulnerable. So I also think that once that has been, they have moved beyond that, there's also the need, to fund and improve capacity, provide support in terms of material and human resources. So Nigerians, that have been battling with funding issues, recently at the national level, that is also affecting how effective, consular services and capacities, can be extended to help migrants. So I feel that there are issues to look at, in terms of considering improving consular support in Nigeria. First is about data collection, knowing how many people that are there, and then know the kind of response that needs to happen. And then there's also the technical skill needed to support migrants effectively and in a timely fashion. But beyond that, there's need to pursue, equality of nations as national practice towards ensuring that citizens are treated with respect by authorities of the host communities. And then also need to collaborate with community associations to sensitize, migrants on the protection opportunities available to them, as both as citizens and also as human beings. So thank you for the time. I've overshoot my time a bit, but thank you.
Not at all, Adebayo. It's very interesting to listen to you and very refreshing, I have to say. And I think that the messages that you have brought across from your experience and from your observations in your research are fundamental. And I think that they are critical in building in us, the key words these days are building back. How are we building back? How are we reimagining? How are we resetting within the context of, a post-COVID world, if we ever will have a post-COVID world. But I think that we have a very good opportunity to get a few reactions actually from some of the questions that or some of the issues that you have raised.